Howdy folks, Jambareeqi here and welcome to another episode of Jambareeqi Cinema, the podcast series where I talk about films that have hit UK theatres. In this episode, I'll be discussing the new live-action remake of Disney's Aladdin. Aladdin is a poor boy who gets by through stealing with help from his monkey Abu, but he starts to question this lifestyle when he meets Princess Jasmine, a woman who wishes to be sultan and help her people, but her father simply wants her to marry into another kingdom for political reasons. Meanwhile, the royal vizier, Jafar, is trying to find a worthy candidate to enter the enchanted Cave of Wonders and retrieve a special lamp for him. Jafar convinces Aladdin that Jasmine would never go for him, but promises him riches if he can get the lamp. Aladdin successfully collects the lamp, but Abu touches the forbidden treasure, and our hero ends up trapped in the cave with the lamp. Al rubs the lamp, releasing the genie, who offers 3 wishes and agrees to help him pull off a prince act to impress Jasmine. But Jafar is onto Al's scheme. Much like other Disney live-action remakes, Aladdin is clearly a cynical cash grab, an opportunity to exploit people's childhood nostalgia, millennials in particular this time. Out of all the ones I've seen so far, this one seems the most focus group driven. As if Disney didn't go into the project with a sincere interest in starting over, but rather researched the internet and came across a BuzzFeed article titled 22 Things Wrong with Aladdin, took it all as serious feedback and followed every single nitpick like a checklist. What we end up with is a film that goes into excruciating detail to explain or defend minor things that Disney fans complained about on the internet, making for an unnecessarily extra-long version of Aladdin full of exposition dumping and excessive dialogue. This makes scenes way less entertaining, because the movie's heart isn't in the story of Aladdin, it's more focused on fixing issues that weren't that big of a deal in the first place, or changing things for the sake of changing them, as if doing the opposite is better somehow. The film really lacks the quick pacing and snappy momentum of the original, one of the movie's strengths. It also likes to skim over some aspects, convinced that most likely the audiences have seen the original already and that'll compensate for what they rush through. For example, the introduction to the Cave of Wonders has no atmosphere at all, it just happens. Such a shame. This is also a far less cartoony and zany version of Aladdin, which would be fine if it made up for that in some way, but it doesn't. We're mainly watching classic scenes being recreated, but with less energy and pizzazz and more dialogue, which means that important moments are now less interesting or drag on more. To make things worse, the backdrops look really cheap and small scale, like I can tell that they were filmed on a movie set. You'd expect Disney to put most of their budget into them, but every location looks like it's from a television production. I mean, the Cave of Wonders is meant to be this treasure trove of gold and gems, but in this film, it's just a bunch of rocks with bits of jewelry scattered everywhere, making for a less colourful and exciting take on the cave. Couple this with how the CGI effects are okay at best. They do their job, but never reach a visual splendour that impressed or enchanted me. Aladdin is likeable, they play him rather innocent and naive this time, it makes him rather cute. But that does mean that when he becomes corrupted by the lamp's power, it's hard for me to buy that he has this dark side. The original Aladdin had this smugness that helped me to believe that he could go rogue. This Aladdin is just too nice and too humble. Jasmine's character has much more emphasis on her independence this time, with her drive to become a sultan being a big part of her character. It is awesome to see an Asian woman being empowered in a mainstream Hollywood film, with a character standing up for herself in a male-dominated kingdom that doesn't respect her. I have nothing at all against that. It helps Jasmine be a more inspiring role model, but this part of Jasmine's character becomes its own plotline in the film, consuming the narrative and not really tying that much into the main story. It begs the question, why didn't Disney just make a Princess Jasmine movie? An idea I would have wholeheartedly supported. Jasmine also has a handmaiden in this remake, most likely in an attempt to expand the female cast. While I like the idea of her having a best friend to talk to and get support from, this character isn't exactly entirely necessary. She's mainly used to help Jasmine throw Aladdin off about being the princess and foreshadow the movie's ending. She could be funny and cute, but if you took her out of the film, it wouldn't ruin that much. Aladdin and Jasmine's romance is fine, a bit too banter-driven this time and less sweetly affectionate, but the actors bring some chemistry to their conversations. I never really cared if they got together or not by the end, because their interactions were much less intimate, but they make for an okay on-screen couple. Will Smith is also having to carry a lot of the film with his natural charisma, but the movie is obviously struggling with how they want to handle the genie. Sometimes it makes great use out of Smith's trademark dry wit, but other times it seems to be trying to recapture the silliness of Robin Williams' genie, even though Disney publicly stated that's not what they wanted to do. Now, I love Will Smith, I really do, but Smith's strength is his cool swagger. He's not an actor that's renowned for versatility or manic delivery, so trying to get him to be cartoony doesn't really work for me. Smith is at his best as the genie when he needs to hype up Prince Ali or seem like the cool straight man next to the bumbling Aladdin. This is when Will Smith's genie is at his most charming and funny. I also didn't like how he did Genie's "my wish is to be free" moment in such a laid-back way. He plays it more like someone has just asked him what colour he wants his new phone to be, not what his greatest desire is. There's a lack of genuine soul-searching because of this. While Will Smith does help the genie to be funny, I wasn't entirely endeared by the character of the genie, because for a lot of the film, he's kind of selfish and rude. He acts more invested in enjoying himself outside the lamp, often condescending poor Aladdin for being unconfident or confused, and only seems to help Aladdin to get him off his back or nab a chance to flirt with the handmaiden. He does display a soft spot for Al sometimes, but only shows his true compassion for him when the remake reaches a point in the story where it's called for. However, to be fair, when the genie is required to be more sincere, Will Smith does show his dramatic acting chops. But like I mentioned in my review of the original Aladdin, I really don't like CGI blue Will Smith genie. He scares me. When I first saw him revealed in the trailer, my heart skipped several beats. I'm not exaggerating or being hyperbolic. There's a level of uncanny valley detail to his hyper-realistic appearance that felt wrong. When they tried to make this version of the genie act cartoony, it's more creepy than funny. It looks too visually unpleasant to me. What the hell did they do to Jafar? Seriously, he's so boring. Jafar was never a complex character, but what made him entertaining was his oily menace and campy flamboyance. Take those things away and you just get a generic bad guy. Iago is a drastically different character too, played more as a creepy threat this time. It's a unique take on the character. There's something unnerving about his presence every time he's in a room. But I often forgot that he was even part of the film, mainly because he doesn't have any kind of developed relationship with Jafar. One of the only aspects of the film that carries its appeal is the fact that it's inherited all these great classic songs, and this time they can be enhanced with modern mixing and a bigger budget. I also like how they gave a hip-hop slant to the Genie songs. It helps Will Smith perform them more organically, as rap is where his career started. But he's a decent singer to be fair too. But the thing is, these songs were backed up with really creative and fun visuals in the original film. However, because the cartoony nature has been toned down dramatically in this remake, we end up with quite uninspired things happening on screen. Like, One Jump Ahead no longer has a constant rhythm of fun gags being thrown at the audience. Now it's just Aladdin and Jasmine walking down the streets with the guards following behind them. They get to do a few stunts, but their escape from the guards never matches the upbeat melody of One Jump Ahead. And you can tell that Disney noticed this, so they try to make up for it by cheesily speeding up the footage to make it look somewhat cartoonier. While A Whole New World is the only scene where I almost switched off, this is supposed to be an iconic sequence, yet it has no excitement or adrenaline. All I saw was two attractive movie stars sat on a carpet in front of a green screen. The film does include a new song called Speechless, which does decently capture Jasmine's desire to speak her mind in a palace where she's told to keep quiet and be pretty. But it's more than obvious that this song is trying too hard to be yet another Let It Go from Frozen. Don't get me wrong, Naomi Scott sings it with a bombastic tenacity and self-confident strength. But while listening to the song, I can't help but imagine Disney executives rubbing their hands in excitement over this attempt to clone a hit song. When Alan Menken and Howard Ashman first pitched Aladdin to Disney, it came from a place of heart. They genuinely wanted to tell this story and had a passion for the overall concept in mind. I can tell that this remake wasn't born from that same love. but rather dollar signs in Disney executives' eyes. It fails to recapture the spirit of the original, toning down the zany cartooniness drastically, except in a few places with the genie, but that just ends up being creepy. This is a film with an end credits version of Friend Like Me that opens with DJ Khaled, someone whose lasting impression on the cultural zeitgeist is his ability to say his own name and point out that he's done another song. I highly doubt that Disney thought that DJ Khaled of all people would bring a timeless value to this remake. They just know that he's very popular, don't have much faith in their film, and want an easy way to get butts and seats. This is one of the better Disney live-action remakes I've seen, but mainly thanks to Will Smith's charming genie, Naomi Scott's bold, confident Jasmine, the fun songs with high production values, and the colourful costumes. Not much else compensates for all the elements that fail or don't work, like the boring take on a more war-hungry Jafar, overlong dialogue-driven storytelling, cheap location sets, and uninspired, obligated recreations of classic scenes. It may have more personality and colour than most of the other Disney live-action remakes, but Disney's corporate intentions and commercial money grubbing are at its loudest here. If you or your kids enjoyed this film, then good for you, that's great. But I personally was not impressed, and you can count me as a disappointed Disney fan. I've been Jambareeqi and I hope you enjoyed this review. If you did, then feel free to subscribe, like, and share. Cheerio, folks.